sitting here today in the continuation of our female executive leadership series. We're sitting with Irene Buhrfeindt, the Vice President Asia for Tronox. Tronox is a U.S. global titanium dioxide business. And Irene is fantastic in many ways. One of the real exciting points about Irene is that she's reached such a level of success in very much a male-dominated industry. And we have so much to ask her and so much to hear from her today. Format is 10 questions in 10 minutes. All right, first one. What lesson from your experiences can you share that is unique to being a female leader?
I think one of the most important things for me, even when I started my career, was to realize that femininity is important to us. That's who we are. One of the lessons is I was at that point living in Canada, and it was my first role being a technical service person, going out into the field to try and resolve an issue. And this was a field area where not many women would go because it's a lumber yard. And we created special hooks, technical hooks, which were elastomeric material that was supposed to break at a certain stress point when they were carrying lumber. And I had to try and fix some issues because the hooks were actually not breaking, which means they were too strong. And what happens is that you damage the equipment. So as you know, lumber yards are usually male-dominated. I was very pleasantly surprised because they were very helpful. They saw me as a woman. And I didn't pretend to be a man, but they were very supportive of me. And that was one of the real growing up in my earlier years in Korea, realizing that femininity is still very key to who we are. And it is one of our strengths.
Keeping femininity in a lumber yard.
Yes.
Can't imagine that being easy. Moving on. Throughout this journey, even as a young woman, what woman inspired you?
John, when I look at inspiration, there are two sides to the coin. What inspires me and what doesn't inspire me. So people who inspire me are people who are authentic, and it shows. You don't have to ask them to be authentic. It just vibrates out and they show who they really are, and they are genuine, who they want to be, and they help you along the process. It's a very easy word to say, but it's very difficult to isolate, who is authentic, and that really inspires me. What also does not inspire me when I see people who are not authentic, who are trying to be in a men's world and have behaviors, tendencies towards being a man because they feel that that is part of how they should be to get into that job. Striking that balance over the last 30 years and really trying to understand who are inspirational, who still have the femininity, who still can get the job done. And I've seen those on the total reverse also, who think that they have to behave like the male counterparts to get the jobs. And that's not been the case at all.
Moving on now, as a leader in your business and also in your life, how do you set the tone?
It revolves around who I am. I set the tone. I'm a very open person, direct. And that's part of who I am. It's my character. So whenever I work with my team, it's not about me being the supervisor. It's about us. Because when it's about us, then we can start to see how things would work as a team. So it doesn't really matter what I have to do. Once everyone believes in we, everything sort of works like clockwork. And I think that's the effort that I share with my entire team, who most of the team members are actually male.
I think that's enabled you to have your success. Over the years, have you experienced any barriers into your success and growth as a female leader?
The barriers, whether it's intentional or whether it's unintentional, there's always going to be barriers. And this is not just in Korea, this is in everyday life, right? The barriers in pursuing a senior role or a leader's role, part of it is I've realized after so many years in the working world, part of those barriers are actually me, because there's so much emotions about where you want to go that it actually clouds your judgment. So that's what I'm trying to say about me, about trying so hard to knock down the barrier, but you could probably have a better avenue if you just walk around it as opposed to, taking a hammer at it, trying to chip away the big rock that's in front of you.
Yeah, that is so important that oftentimes we just take a step back, right?
And I've done a lot of that in my life. So I started to learn.
Yes. You mentioned before about authenticity inspiring you. When you think of leaders that you've worked with or worked for over the years, what are some of the traits that you admire amongst them or amongst other leaders you've just seen in the workplace?
I've been very fortunate to see an array of leaders. Tronox is a mining organization. And the leader of the organization has core values about caring for people, whether it's on the safety perspective of mining, or we are talking about grooming individuals throughout the career path within the organization. He has a unique way of doing this, that this entire vision, core vision, is throughout the entire organization.
Okay.
And it's not easy to do that. You can always create core values and stick it on a wall, but it does not mean that it's going to be lived throughout the entire organization. So it goes to the point that it's not a company, it's a person. The leader is a person. The leader supports the rest of the leaders to have a certain way of working, whether it's a behavior, a vision, core values. And it takes time to build this culture. And this culture has been embedded in Tronox for quite a while. Like I said, diversity is important. And earlier, before we started, I think what's even as important is inclusion.
Sure. And
being heard, right? I think that's the part to get that inclusion really embedded into the organization is usually a very, very challenging task. And leaders that have inspired me, as I mentioned earlier, authentic, but also simple. Simplicity is underrated.
Sure.
And sometimes as women, we overthink. And part of that is because of who we are. And anyway, I do. And I realized that when you go back into the facts and the logic behind it, it actually isn't that complicated. You can compartmentalize these issues and make a decision going forward.
Thank you, Irene. When you started, did you imagine yourself as a leader, or over the years have you stumbled into this role?
I've always wondered what it was like to sit at the top of the totem pole. And I was wanting to see it, to see whether I could fit and help others grow into that role. So I never really knew how to position myself as a leader, but I've always liked myself to have a chance to become a leader in any form. But over the years, it sort of just moved into this position of where I am today. And I think partly is because it has to do with my character when I was very young, because, I lived in a society in Malaysia where boys are important and girls are less, and nothing wrong or right. It was at that point in time. And I realized that, what's so special about them that doesn't allow me to be a leader. And that's in my teenage years. And there's always been this curiosity when I went into the working world, what it would like to become a leader. And I wanted to be no different from a male.
And you've gotten to where you wanted to be. So what enabled you to instill more and more confidence in yourself along that journey?
So it started with the fact that I was a shy girl, very shy. And I was uncomfortable as a teenager, taller than most women. And growing into even the 20s, I was still very uncomfortable. But I realized that in order to gain the confidence, we need to practice. It's all about practice, right? So I'm a chemist in the paints world for almost 30 years of my life. And I realized that a lot of people were asking about technical questions. And I started to spend a lot of time presenting in conferences. every year in the early 90s, there were 4 or 5 conferences around Asia Pacific, and we would then do a roadshow. So I started to build this confidence by just repetitive work, repetitive presentation, and each time trying to figure out what can I do better than the next, and hearing the feedback from people, what works for them. So it's gaining the confidence by pushing yourself in areas that you're probably not comfortable in. I had butterflies in my belly every time I went up onto the stage. So it's no different now anyway.
What advice would you have to other women who want to be a mentor?
Mentor is a word that sometimes I feel that it overwhelms me. It's a big word. It's a big ask. But I think I look at it more as a coach. And I've been mentoring individuals, men and women. And I think the most important thing is we mentor as many people as we can. Every day, of course, you're going to have people that are going to come easily to you more because of similarities of whether it's culture or different kinds of work. But I think if you have a chance, if you just do it daily, we can probably accelerate this activity of women's leadership far more than probably where we are today.
I think sometimes we need to give back proactively.
So my latest mentor-mentee activity is actually with a gentleman here, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. We are now in 3 months down the road, and he has a little girl. So we are also working to mentor him on how he needs to approach work. But it's sort of, we have become friends. So it's not a mentor-mentee because he's asking me, how should I manage my little girl? So it's also bringing up those little ones that eventually will come into the workforce, right? And having the mental change for the father because he sees me as who he wants his daughter to be like. And I think that's the exchange. And we have a very open conversation about it, and he's willing to listen to it.
That's fantastic, Irene. If you think back, what's been the greatest risk you've taken?
I started off as a technical person, being a chemist, but I knew that early on that I would probably be better in the commercial world, and I wanted to spend time with people as opposed to being in a laboratory. So I realized that being a technical person to move into a full-fledged commercial role requires several stages. So you are moving towards a commercial role, and it takes at least 10 or 15 years before you can move out. It's actually quite difficult for companies or leaders that would like to hire you, realizing that you are only coming from a technical role to become commercial. So to have that opportunity is extremely challenging at that point in time of my life. However, in early 2000, I was then the innovations director for a large company. And again, technical role, right? So I got to try and move out of this. There was a role in China at that time. It was a big multinational Dutch company to run a polymer plant. And I was just wondering why they approached me. And basically, I found out that the company was about to be divested. So obviously, there's not that many people who would like to go into a situation where a company is about to be divested at that point in time. So I took up the role. I went to China. I packed my bags, and I ran a polymer plant based in Suzhou. I spent about 4 years there. Okay. So that just uprooted me from technical commercial overnight. So it's taking the opportunity when it's there.
Many people in STEM-related functions are contemplating the move into a commercial side. And your story could obviously give them some confidence and some hope. I think your genuine discussion and articulation of your journey and the authentic sort of side of you that you've shared today really is inspiring to many. And thank you for sitting down with us today. Hopefully all is well with you and your family during this time, and take care.